little tight up here, but I'm just going with it. You know what I mean?
No, I think you look good.
I'm leaning into the tight shirts like I'm leaning into the tight new rules in this new world of buyer agency.
That's right.
And that's something that we're going to focus on talking about today on the podcast that we come to you with every week, and that is called
Hangin
with the Homeboys. Everybody, you're here. It is August 21st, 2024, and we're in somewhat of a new world, but that is also just like the old world, you know?
That's right. We're in the middle of the year, but it's a new beginning for everybody that's in real estate. And this time it's not just Topeka, it's not just Kansas. We're talking nationwide stuff that has implications from everybody that's watching this. I guess we are a worldwide platform here. So for everybody outside the United States, take a listen.
I think the agents in Dubai that are a part of the National Association of Realtors, or maybe it would be is it the International Association of Realtors then?
Ooh.
I know that it has extensions like that.
Yeah.
Like those folks are probably subject to the same rules in some sense. But, one of the things that we're finding and that we're talking about a lot is that in different regions, there are very different laws out there for buyer agency. Just like there'd be different rules in Dubai, there are different rules between Missouri and Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas and all that type of thing. Like we all have our own Kansas or our own state laws that govern how we act as buyer agents and seller agents. And for you guys out there that aren't agents, that means the ways in which we represent buyers and sellers in transactions, and the ways that when we represent them, how we have a fiduciary responsibility for them and look out for them and advise them.
That's right. And another aspect of this settlement that has brought along these changes is the issue of transparency, right? And also, when you have changes like this, you can usually boil it down to a few people, a few percentage of the entire people affected that may have ruined it for everybody, I guess you could say, doing some things that were below the board.
It's definitely true in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I'll just put this out there before we get into it too much. I'm in favor of the changes. I'm happy about the new world that we're living.
We did not talk about, I'm just kidding. Honestly, we didn't have a plan for what we're going to talk about in here today. And, it's interesting to hear you say that you're in favor of it. And I'm not against it either, and I think that has a lot to do with your level of understanding of buyer agency or believing in buyer agency or what it is we're doing for people. Would you say so?
That's a big part. Think about the industry that I left.
Oh, which one? The landscape, the lawn industry, the grass in your own yard industry? No, the car business.
The car business,
sir.
guys, where we have the lowest trust rating, in all industries. It's like really, really far down, right up there next to lawyers, and we earned those rankings among the people. Collectively, 100%. We did so many things and are still doing so many things in a shady way when it comes to disclosures. And at the end of the day, before you buy the car, you are going to have to sign like 20 different pieces of paper that absolves the dealership of everything that they just put you through that you're not going to read, and it makes it just okay.
Like a hold harmless?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Several of them, yes.
I never even, I just bought a car. And I didn't even consider whether I signed a hold harmless or not. Like that in a real estate transaction.
It's first thing that you signed.
When that other company slides that hold harmless across the table to my buyer, like right before the close, at the end of the closing. And I say, hold on, what's that? Like, Mr. Buyer, you don't have to sign that if you don't want to. My company doesn't ask people to sign a hold harmless. But you can if you want. It's just not necessary. And also not required. Hold harmless is the document that says, hey, if you got screwed somehow, you're holding everybody harmless.
It ain't my fault. That's exactly what it is. And so, I come from that industry, and so I'm highly aware of how bad it can get. And I was able to thrive in an industry that was rife with a lot of people who used dishonesty as a strategy. Okay, we're not talking about accidentally leaving things out. This was strategic. Tell them what they want.
Not everybody, just a lot of people.
Most of the people in the industry. But when you finally meet somebody that's not like that in the industry, that is big bad scary wolves behind every corner,
Or like a magnet.
It makes that person stick out. And that's how I was able to thrive in that industry, by actually explaining the things that the other people were afraid to bring up. As salespeople, we're taught to avoid anything that could make the customer reconsider, go backwards in their momentum towards the sale. Anything that might make them say, well, maybe this isn't for me, you're supposed to avoid that. But as a true consultant, not a salesperson, but as if you're an actual consultant, you're going to go over the good, the bad, and the ugly and let them make the choice. And you're not going to artfully leave out things that may be a pain point to those customers.
I mean, to be fair to every car salesman out there who's selling, they do not represent the buyer. They're there
to make you believe that they represent you, right?
But they actually, they are negotiating against the buyer, right? And they're doing that because their employer is telling them to do,
has incentivized
coaching,
them,
and is
to
also
do so. The better you do that job, the more money you're going to get as a salesperson.
So it's not the salesperson's fault. It's not like they can come in and say, "I'm sorry, car ombudsman or car Oz or whatever. I am going to represent the buyer, and guess what? Thank you, I'm fired."
Well, here's what. Let me speak about that.
Okay.
Because in the beginning, I was not able to advocate to the level that I would like to for customers.
In the beginning.
Yeah. But as I
made money,
cut my teeth, proved to them that I was an asset, all of a sudden I could advocate for the customer. And all of a sudden I'm going back to the desk telling my boss where we need to be and why we need to be there, and listening to the story of the buyer, which is everything that the bosses train you not to do. You're supposed to hear it, but you're not supposed to actually care. They're telling you they need to be at a certain budget. You're supposed to just keep on selling, even though you're going to be several hundreds of dollars higher than that budget, and then see if they'll break in the end. But what I found was actually advocating for the salespeople and learning how to manipulate my bosses. Helped me gain the trust of the customer overall, get more referrals and repeat customers than anybody else at that dealership at that time. And everybody still won. It was still setting up a proposition where the dealership won. We don't have to hit a home run every time we're at bat. And I'm not going to allow my customers to be that home run every time I get up to bat. There's going to be some people who buy the right car on the right day that don't know nothing, and they feel like it's a great deal, and that dealership is going to be popping champagne because of that customer. But by and large, most deals are just average deals, and
I'm trying to figure out the best way to relate this back to what's going on in real estate right now with buyer agency. And like what you're saying is like the role of a consultant, sort of like a car buyer agent. It was actually more beneficial for those buyers, right? And also still beneficial for those sellers. Like in that car selling situation, the seller has total advantage. The seller is almost taking advantage of all these buyers coming through that are naive, that don't even have an option for a buyer agent. Like you bring a buyer agent to go buy a car, you probably get laughed at. I don't know if that's possible or not.
It's a thing now, but we won't get into that.
Okay. Well, what's happening in the real estate industry is that we are changing things in a way that is undercutting or allowing this idea to grow out there that buyer agents are not important. And it's not only are buyer agents not important in some people's minds, but buyer agents should be cheaper. Buyer agents should be paid for by people that can't afford to pay for them in some way. And what is going to end up happening is that these buyers that don't have buyer agents are going to end up coming into house sales like it's a car sale. They're going to end up buying stuff that they shouldn't buy. They're going to end up making mistakes. They're going to end up giving that seller of the house the highest margin that the seller could possibly have. Great for the seller. That is great. But that's not what this is about. That's something that we're trying to avoid, and it's a pitfall that's not being accentuated.
That's
you
right.
know what I mean? It's actually being denied, like it's not even going to happen. And don't worry, it'll work itself out. Well, what about in the meantime when when thousands, tens of thousands of buyers go it on their own and make huge mistakes? You're talking about costing families, people that are trying to they're trying to get a bargain because they need a bargain, and they're not paying for representation because they think they can't afford it, or maybe they really can't afford it. And those are the ones that actually end up getting screwed to the tune of $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, and they don't even realize it until 10 years later when they go to sell and find out that they missed a lot of things that a buyer agent could have helped them with. Is that too much?
No.
Should I just go home right now?
No, I need you here. I need you by my side, because this is new waters. But what I'll say is, in this new world that we are in, we can no longer gloss over the fact that a prospective buyer client, somebody that we want to help buy a house, but we have not yet formalized that relationship with a contract yet, okay? We need to lean into the fact that we need to be the ones letting them know that you could buy the house that you want without us, okay? You don't have to be represented in a deal. And I think if you are one of the agents that are afraid to go down that road or even look down that path, you're only hurting everybody, and you're part of the reason why we are where we at right now. Because if you need to explain to them that it's a free country, they can do what they want, but they need to understand why they're putting themselves at a disadvantage. And your analogy was so perfect, because the alternative is, okay, I've shown you this house, okay? You say you like it. These are the advantages if you allow me to help you buy this house. And then this is what might happen if you just call the number on the sign, the listing agent who has already signed a contract with the people who own this house. You were walking into the car dealership and saying, what kind of deal can you make me on one of these cars out here? And you have nobody that is asking the questions that need to be asked. And just like in car sales, we're going to accentuate the things that are going to move the sale forward, and we are going to cover up the things that possibly could make you hesitate, keep looking, reconsider, and sleep over on these things, okay? And it's not like it's not even going to seem like it's being done in a nefarious way. It's just human nature. It's the same human nature that I used when I would go back to the desk when I was selling cars and tell the exact story that I needed to tell to get my guy at the desk to soften up on these customers and allow them to buy a car at a fair price. Humans are still involved, okay? And that's why what we're doing now, I think, is the best thing, because we are now being upfront before we even sell the house or before we even show the house. There's now paperwork that must be signed. That client, that buyer client, either has to formalize that relationship with you before you go show them the house, or they have to sign a showing agreement that says, hey, we're not in a formalized agreement quite yet, but I do recognize that if I am looking to buy the house that you show me, these are the steps and these are my options. And one of those options includes going about this all alone. And then they have to sign that, and shows that everybody is understood before you even go into the house. That's something that was not required back in the day. And like I said, I'm happy about it.
When you said at the very end, like there's an entry that says that you could go about this all alone. You're actually signing on a line saying that. That reminded me of the hold harmless part.
Talk to me.
Like, if I bet you, there's going to be a hold harmless at the end if you are buying as a buyer without a buyer agent, especially, that says that, hey, buyer beware, like you did all, you're on your own, like we did our part and you can't sue us for anything now. Please sign this or you can't close. I mean, what's that buyer even going to think at the table? Who are they even going to ask? Like, ChatGPT, should I sign the hold harmless because I bought a house without a buyer agent? What is this document safe? Yeah. They don't even have anybody to ask about that.
That's right.
So what will they do? They'll just sign it, probably, just like all the other documents throughout the whole process that they just signed. I mean, you have a loan, you got title documents, you've got the actual contracts, you've got amendments, this is, it could be like 30 documents, right? Well, you had the mortgage sometimes in the mortgage process, there's like little insurance that gets sneaked in there. There's maybe other hold harmlesses. Who knows what kind of documents could make it in to those packets even. Like, I'm there at the closing to look for a couple of, if I hear something like, what was that? What is that thing? Like somebody to ask questions to know that it's not normal. I didn't mean to go on a vague spiel about hold harmless, but I did want to go into possibly any kind of mistakes that you might think could occur. So we've talked big picture a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like why somebody needs a buyer agent. How about, and we can come back to that too, but what about a couple of examples? Can you think, let's just go through one example from you and one example from me possibly about how a buyer could make a mistake and how that mistake might seem small, but it could have a huge effect. You want me to talk about one real quick and you think of one, or do you have one?
If you got one on the brain, go ahead. I've got one.
Yeah, you go. Because, there's a lot of my vibration going on in here.
Okay, well, let me even some things out, give you some counterpoint to that vibrato. So we know that even as agents, other agents will almost, I'm not trying to overuse this word, but they will try to bully the agent on the other side to do something that they're not required to do by contract. Yeah. That happens more than you guys realize behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So why do I say that? Well, if and a lot of times it's successful, especially if you're dealing with senior agent and agent that's only been doing it maybe less than 5 years like me.
Sure.
And they will say, do you know how many transactions I've done? When you try to question them, when they say it should go one way, and you question them and say, well, actually, by contract, it doesn't say. Because I've done this hundreds of times.
Because even the new agent that's been through it 20 times doesn't know for sure.
That's right. But they're trying to do the right thing. That's right. And they're trying to, represent right. And sometimes those bullies can be tough. Imagine how much of a chance you have when you've done 0 of these deals and you've never been an agent and you're just a regular person and you've got an agent on the other side. This isn't a for sale by owner where you're just dealing with another unseasoned salesperson that's happened to sell their house. No, you're dealing with somebody who does this for a living, and there are literally 100 different turns that could go one way or another. And one in particular that I could say a person is definitely going to get taken advantage of is when it comes to inspections.
Hey, don't forget though, remember this part too, like as the buyer, like you have a job, another job. Like maybe you sell cars somewhere, or maybe you install air conditioning systems, or maybe you work at Burger King, wherever. You have a job, right? Also, you have deodorant, right? Where is your freaking deodorant, man? Because you're 1 week away from closing. All your stuff is packed up in boxes. Your wife does not know where the spoons are. You don't know where your deodorant is, and now you're getting this call about hey, this form, sign it. You need to sign it now, or tomorrow is too late. You can't get the loan. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Who are you gonna ask?
Come on.
You're going to be sweating, dude. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah. All right. I just want to set the scene.
And keep in mind too, the lender that you're working with who should have your best interest in mind is also incentivized to get this deal to close. They've already expunged so many hours working on this file. They're still a human. They're still going to kind of prod this thing along. And they may not necessarily be your best agent as well. But I can tell you that when it comes to negotiations, agent to agent, when it comes to inspections, you'd be surprised how many agents don't quite understand that part of the contract and will try to get away with some stuff either due to ignorance or because they're just being bad people and trying to get something over your head. And I think that is going to be a part where, and when you're unrepresented, good luck. They're going to try to make things okay that maybe should be taken a little bit more serious.
Last week, I had an agent do the bully thing.
On you?
Yeah.
Who's been an agent for how long, Lou?
17 years.
Oh, how many years have they been doing it?
Probably 17. I don't know. Somewhere around there. I remember from being around, and it was the repair negotiation time, and she over-asked on the repairs. She asked for way too many repairs. Additionally, she added in like a time. She complicated them. She didn't ask in a lump. She like, you do this, we do that. And then she put you're getting this at 5:00. We'd like you to respond tomorrow by 2 p.m. so that they can notify their landlord at 6 p.m. My sellers were exacerbated. I mean, they were so angry. They were angry already because of how many repairs it was, but because of the way she tried to speed us up, that exacerbated their anger and made it even stronger. And I'm even there, and the whole time I was at their house, they're thinking, we can't respond by that time. We can't do that. We can't do this. And I'm like, guys, you don't have to do that. That's just something that she's saying. She's making a very extreme repair request, and she's speeding you up, and it doesn't matter. That's not important for us. Oh, yeah. And then even after quelling that, they're still upset because it's just really ugly. So these are...
Well, and let me further explain to the audience why this is important. These two factors that we're talking about were already adjudicated at the time of the contract. They knew exactly how many dollars worth of repairs they could ask for or negotiate already on the contract. And it already says on the contract that the buyer has 10 days to come up with whatever repairs they need, and the seller has 10 days to respond to such a formal request. So all these arbitrary that we're going to ask for more than the contract says we can ask for, and we want you to do it sooner and respond sooner than the contract says. You can ask all you want, but none of that stuff has any legs.
On top of that, in the course of 2 or 3 days after that, I shaved $18,000 of repairs down to $13,000 of repairs because I know the right people to call. I know the right people to get bids from. So these are ways that just a regular person's not going to know how to do that. You know, that's what a buyer agent is. Well, in this case, I was a seller agent, but that's what agents in general are doing for you. It's not all about buyer agents.
That's right. So there were some repairs that they decided or that they got bids on. Then you got different bids, and were able to get some that were a lot more reasonable.
There were even things that they didn't get bids on that she just made up a number. She's like, "Oh, I made a phone call, and that's what I think it is."
and listen, also on our contracts, and this is something that a regular person isn't going to know. The seller gets to choose ultimately who does these repairs. Mm-hmm. The only thing that it says is that they need to be done in a workmanlike manner, which is a very vague way of saying as long as it's done and it's right, it doesn't matter what the invoice says. It doesn't matter if the invoice exists. So when these buyers come in and start saying it's going to be done by my guy and you're going to do it this way, that's also not real. Yeah, but if you don't know nothing and you've never done a deal,
you might just say, okay.
Guess what? Yeah. Well, that's how I get the house. Keep signing.
I want it, So the experience, I mean, that's what you're paying for with the buyer agent. That's why you want them on your side. They've got experience. They've got a network. They've got, just a general knowledge of how the transactions unfold and how they can be, how pressure can be applied, and you don't want that pressure being applied when you can't find your toothbrush. I keep saying this because when we moved 3 years ago, I spent 3 weeks with things in boxes, and it's a really hard way to live.
What he is talking about, guys, is something that you don't even think about and never gets talked enough until you're in it. It is called decision fatigue. Your brain is used to make a certain amount of decisions every day. Even if you're not buying a house, you just rent and it's time to move, the amount of decisions of do we keep this? Do we keep that? God. Where the hell is this? Where the hell is that?
Do we keep it?
Yeah.
I hate that one.
I know, especially when it's more people. But if it's just you can throw stuff away however you want. You can try that when you're married. It's not going to work out well for you when they find out that it's gone. But what I'm saying, guys,
put it all in boxes,
you're already
guys.
Frazzled. You're in a weakened mental condition because you got enough stress going on with real life, and you add moving on top of it.
Do we have any vodka in here? I'm feeling it right now. Oh my gosh.
We've talked about this, about agency on this show before, and I've always said that my number one job as an agent, before anything else, is to avoid catastrophe, is to use my knowledge of how this works to make sure that at minimum, I am not helping somebody make a decision that costs them thousands of dollars or heartache that they did not have to go through. That's my number one job. Everything else, as far as making the deal go along and handling the contracts, that's important. But my number one thing is to make sure that you can never say that me entering your life actually ended up costing you thousands or costing you a bunch of stress.
Okay, and yes, I mean, total, yeah, that's what it's all about right there. That's what we're thinking about all day long. All right, example number 2. Very simple. I'm going to keep it really short and probably miss a couple of things here too. But let's say that you are all packed up. You know, you're ready to move. There's a document that came into your email. You know, you have...
How many days till close?
Oh, it's 5 days till closing. You know,
Okay.
You're supposed to sign something, or you're supposed to answer something, or you're supposed to turn in some kind of a document or something like that. And you know, it seems important, but you've been doing this for 3 weeks. Like, none of them have been that important, you know, but it could wait a day.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it slides by and you forget it's been like 2 days. It's been like 3 days. And now you're 2 days from closing. You're like, oh, don't worry, I'm going to get that to you. Well, sorry, now because you didn't get it to us, we actually can't close in 2 days. We have to delay it from Friday to Monday.
Oof.
You know, well, no, we can't do that because my movers come on Saturday. You know, like I've got all my stuff we're putting it in the truck now. Like I'm going to have to, and then also those sellers, like they're going to go buy something. So like, what is this going to do can't we just close Friday? I'm sorry, you can't. Well, why not? You know, okay, you just can't. So what has happened is this family has all their stuff packed up in a truck. They have movers in July that are only available this weekend because they've been booked for a month and a half. These guys over here, same thing. They're packed up. They're ready to move. They need the move from this sale to buy that house. And there might even be another one over here, but let's just say there's not.
Yeah.
You have 2 families packed up. Their family's coming over. They're going to have pizza. It's going to be the weekend. It's like a party. Guess what? Now the move's not happening until Monday. But you don't have the movers, and you're paying extra for the truck. And these guys, for whatever reason, they can't even sell anymore. So now you're not moving anymore. Now they're not moving anymore either. Your stuff's already packed up. You're just sitting in your house, and you know what? You just lost some money. Like maybe you had a bunch of earnest money in there because you didn't know, and you put down $5,000 worth of earnest money. Well, and you made a mistake. So you actually breached the contract, and you're the one that caused the problems for both the families. They don't want to give back their earnest money because they lost money on movers and their whole house. Like maybe they can't even do what they're planning to do. You can't buy this house, and everything just unravels. And guess what? You know, maybe you don't even buy a house this year. And maybe you don't buy a house the next year. And maybe during those 2 years, that $200,000 house appreciated by 5% or 10% a year. If it was 10%, if it was just 5% a year, it appreciated by $10,000 and then another $10,000, and you missed out on $20,000 of appreciation. You're still in the old house. You still haven't found your deodorant or your toothbrush. You just bought new stuff. And I mean, this is hyperbole, but actually that could totally happen. Could it not?
Absolutely.
Maybe. And it's probably going to put a strain on your relationship too. Like your marriage or whatever, you know, if you weren't married yet. Okay, I'm going too far.
No. Well, listen, that is an amazing scenario because it's absolutely real. And we were only supposed to do one apiece, but I just got one quick one, guys. Okay. Because there's another thing about this new landscape of real estate agency that is happening, and that is on the seller side. In the past, sellers were always encouraged, if not made to believe, that compensation must be offered to the buyer's agent who brings in a buyer, because that's what a MLS is, multiple listing service. That means multiple agencies who are technically not affiliated with each other it's like if every car dealership in your town had one website. right?
Man.
And you could see all the cars that were available, regardless of what dealer. Wouldn't that be awesome?
And they're acting like this is a problem.
I know. But because we have that, it was allowing buyers to know up front that if I help sell a car at a different dealership, I'm still going to get paid. And so now with this new lawsuit happening and the new landscape, sellers are now being told that they don't necessarily have to offer compensation to a buyer's agent. Now, at our brokerage, we are still going to be heavily encouraging sellers the different reasons why they should offer compensation to a buyer's agent. But I want to do a quick thought scenario of a seller who decides they want to go that route. They said, you know what? This is a new day. I would have had to have paid, maybe we're just going to throw 6% out there in the past. Now I'm going to pay 3% because I only want to pay the person listing my house. The buyer be damned. Okay. And so let's say that seller agent agrees with the strategy and signs up. Okay. Well, here's the problem. What they've just signed up to do was really twice the work for half the pay. Because once they get that unrepresented buyer, just because that agent doesn't truly formally represent that buyer, and in fact, because they don't formally represent that buyer, getting that buyer to walk through the steps of the sale and to do things on a timely manner is that much harder.
The buyer has to worry every time they're getting advice from this agent that it's actually hurting them.
Absolutely. We don't know each other. There's no relationship there. So they're second guessing everything that I am telling them as a buyer, as they should, because we just explained to you why having somebody on your team makes sense.
Yeah.
And so now getting them to sign the documents and to jump through the hoops and to pay the earnest money is harder when there's no relationship. So now I'm doing twice the work, but half the work is twice as hard. So maybe I'm doing 3 times the work on paper when it's all said and done.
It's 278% of the work. Hold on, let me recalculate this. It's a lot more work. Yeah, very good point.
It is, guys. So it's not really fair to me as the seller's agent to take that on. And you know, most cases, I'll probably, if I meet somebody that's hell-bent on going that way, I'll probably say that they're probably not going to be a good fit for me. Because truthfully, I don't want to be in that situation where I have to be responsible for somebody that I don't have a relationship at all. And if things start to go left and all of a sudden they stop answering the phone and stop emailing, I don't have a lot of recourse for that seller because I don't have an agent on the other side who's incentivized on bringing this guy to the closing table no matter what.
On the seller side, if we're that listing agent, that seller agent, like if somehow this buyer has a bad end result and they have construed that we manipulated them in some way, are we going to get sued? Are we protected just because we were representing the seller? Like, are we going to have to make even more representations about the property and the situation and the validity of everything just because they don't have somebody to explain it to them?
Yeah.
Like, does that make us even more put in peril? I think it probably does.
I mean, we've got documents that unrepresented buyer would have to sign that explains to them the different types of agency and how they're receiving absolutely none of those. But who knows? There may be somebody that can poke holes in some of those documents and say, you know what? Yeah, they signed that and they knew they weren't represented, but you still this and you still that. And even if the lawsuit is frivolous, you still have to defend yourself. And defense by a lawyer ain't free. Trust me. Call a lawyer. You don't even have to see him in person. You're going to get a bill. Okay. So it's murky enough for me that there's a reason why us as a brokerage are really encouraging our sellers to still offer some compensation to the buyer. We haven't even gotten into the other reasons why a buyer would be better. But please, Neil.
What do you got, sir?
I think we need to clarify on that as well. Not just because the seller's not going to offer compensation to a buyer's agent doesn't mean that the buyer is going to show up unrepresented. I think we need to.
This is true. Yeah. So
there's always the negotiation door is always open on that.
And you know, that's really one of the end results of the changes, the lawsuit, you know, the settlement And that is that the buyers are now they're aware. Basically they were paying, the argument is that they were paying a commission that they didn't know that they were paying. They didn't have a chance to negotiate that commission.
There you go.
So now the forms, they're having a chance to, it's being, we're making sure that buyer has that conversation with the buyer agent about what the commission will be. And there is some type of agreement between the buyer and the buyer agent. And then if that seller offers commission, then that is entered into the conversation as well. And what we're talking about when we're at our company, when we are encouraging sellers to offer that commission to a buyer agent on top of what they're paying to their seller agent, we are making it as easy as possible. We are letting those buyer agents know and letting those buyers know that the commission is already out there. The seller is paying it from their funds. They have made the decision to do that. And if there's some type of a different arrangement between you and your buyer agent, you guys work that out. We just want you to know that we believe that a buyer agent needs to be paid fairly for the amount of work they're going to do, so that you have a good buyer agent, so that you have somebody who is getting paid at the rate that they've been being paid for years and years and years, how it's become a near standard. We haven't talked about what that commission is that's being offered to that buyer agent. That's a conversation between the buyer and the buyer agent. Okay. But we are, as the sellers, we are trying to influence the situation to let them know that money is there, so that it's something that doesn't need to be argued about, or something
or fought for.
Or cause a problem, or a wedge between service and the buyer in closing.
Yes, and to Neil's point, let's just do a really quick thought experiment. You've got the seller that does not want to pay a buyer's agent. So that means Mr. and Mrs. prospective buyer could either be unrepresented, or they could have a buyer's agent that they feel so strongly about that they are going to pay that buyer's agent a commission out of their own pocket, rather than what we would see on 99% of the sales in the past. It would just come out of the proceeds of the sale. And so now the buyer, who already had a certain amount of closing costs that they were expecting, down payments that they were expecting, are now on this particular house, because of what the seller wants, are going to have to pay their buyer agent a certain amount of dollars on top of all those other closing costs, which for some buyers, if not most buyers in this inflationary environment, is going to prohibit them from being able to buy that house, which is one of the biggest reasons why we also feel like offering buyer's agency is something that helps the overall pool of buyers, which helps the seller get a stronger offer, more competition on that deal. And then the other thing that could happen is the buyer, the Mr. or Mrs. prospective buyer, they could try along with their buyer to say, hey, I know you said you didn't want to pay me any money to do this deal, but what if you paid me anyway? And here's our offer. And that's what he was talking about. The wedge is when you've got sellers that say they won't pay, or maybe we'll pay, but we won't tell you how much we're going to pay. It just adds a whole nother element that is really touchy, because there are going to be some buyers that are going to tell you straight up, or buyer's agents that say, if they have to pay me this money, they're not going to buy this house. Take that however you want to take that. Okay.
Some of the things that I'm worried about how this could affect our industry, are these. Like, I'm worried that buyer agents will have a tough time negotiating their commissions, and eventually buyer agents will filter out of the business. And it may come to the point to where there aren't enough buyer agents out there and even the ones that exist are spread too thin to serve everyone. So what may have happened is we may have lowered the labor force of agents to work with buyers, and because it's a lot of work. So that's one thing. Is there anything you're worried about?
I just want to give a quick counterpoint to that, because I come from sales, and when it comes to, I believe there are a lot of people in our industry. We are in the sales industry, and I believe there are a lot of our contemporaries that do not understand the basics and the principles and tenets of it being in sales. And those are the people who are going to go away. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I am of the means of the strong, only the strong survive. The agents who are willing to have tough conversations early on, the agents who are not going to gloss over pain points, but are going to deal with them head on and have those tough conversations, those are going to be the ones that win. And I think that's going to strengthen our industry. Now, will it thin things out for a while? Yes, it will. But it will make a direct signal that the new rookies, the new world of agents that come into the business have to actually be okay with sales and cannot just be simple order takers and make it anymore, because it is a new world where you have to have tough conversations.
So it should raise the level of professionalism, right?
Absolutely.
At the same time, it's possible that it could create another segment of the market, which is like the lower level of service, the lower level of professionalism, just the sign it. Yep, sign it. Just do it. Do that. Yes, no, maybe no liability here. Not really representing you. Just providing a map through the transaction. And you know that maybe that's what people want too. But again, dangerous. It's tough to change is always hard, you know, and I worry about it. So is it the right way to feel that things were pretty good in terms of how buyers were, at least the good buyer agents were representing their buyers? I felt like it was kind of hunky-dory, but maybe the thinning of the herd,
I'm completely
raises
okay with
the
that.
level of professionalism, guys.
I want them to be mad. I want them to be scared. I want them to be upset. And I want them to just not renew the license. I mean, truthfully, if it's that upsetting to you, you know, what do they say? UPS is hiring. They're always hiring. There's something else that you can do, but I believe the highest level of transparency is what this industry needs. We were already much higher level than what you would get in the car industry, and the rankings of car agents versus home agents is, you know, that's always been a big difference. And I want that standard to be as high as possible. And it makes things a little tougher, yes, in some cases, and we got to jump through some hoops that we didn't used to have to jump through, but that's everything. There are so many things that I bet that you know just in your 17 years in the industry that have changed when it comes to the red tape involved in buying houses and what used to happen before closing and what happens now between bankers, title companies, and all the extra red tape that has been happening because of, you know, the sins of our past. Yeah. You know, you know, I mean,
well, as far as the future goes, here at Coldwell Banker American Home, Chris and I, we're going to be putting everything through the filters. We've got the filters of our core values here, and those core values are home, of course, because it's all about home, finding home, buying home, selling home, ingenuity, and using that to the benefit of our industry and our clients. Excellence in the same way, making sure that we rise to the level of what this industry should be. And then awesomeness. When it's all done, everybody's feeling great in their home and everyone's happy and coming back for more. What do you think about that?
I mean, I've got nothing to say because it was that good. That's what we are.
Well, we're here again. We're happy to see you guys. We'll be back every week. You're here with us at Hangin
with the Homeboys.
Thank you. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
See you soon.
See you. Peace.